Hi all, Rick here. A long topic ahead, so straight in. The Klingon houses make up the backbone of their society. Each family can in effect establish its own house, however, the legacy of their ancestors attributes itself to the reputation of each house, so starting a fresh house is a risk, unless one is seeking to distance themselves from the dishonour of their relatives. New Klingons can be adopted into a house, and not just by marriage. In this way, houses grow, absorb the influence, and attain pledges from others. If one becomes influential enough, they are invited to join the Great Houses of the Empire, and the head of that house makes up one of the 24 Councillors, who has the ear of the Chancellor, the leader of the Empire. Now, it is said that there are 24 Great Houses, but this is not always consistent and is difficult to track. I have found 48 Great Houses throughout Klingon history, not counting the first house of Kalis, the Imperial founder. The Great Houses have been known to change their names, based on the current heads and traditions, or to harken back to greater leaders in their past. For example, the House of Cryptic will likely be known as this for some time to incur the link to the former Chancellor of the Empire. On top of this, the Klingons will often use the name of their house for a newborn to that house, leading to several namesakes over the years. Houses can also simply fall out of prominence, be overtaken by others, forcing them to yield their positions on the High Council, or even be dishonoured and stripped of their position. Also, as a Chancellor does not have to be from one of the Great Houses, then becoming the leader of the Empire is going to rapidly elevate your house to one of the Greats. Some of these houses are drawn from beta canon and others featured in different eras, but all have held the status as one of the High Council members at some point. From the top. Antuk was a house introduced in Enterprise as a house of warriors, where the son, Antuk, had bucked the trend by becoming a physician. This house may have disowned him, but it was his experiments in 2154 that resulted in the Klingon augment virus, creating the Kuch-Ha, or human-looking Klingons. House Bronal was a rival great house defeated by Kalis in ancient times. House Bavat is a house that was in opposition to Duras in its early years, before becoming a great house after Duras fell and seems to have taken their seat on the council. House Darmuk had a reputation for some of the most ferocious warriors of the 2370s. Da Choh was primarily a naval-based house that fought under Gowron during the Dominion War. Dakhatas was a house from the far future that made the unorthodox choice of fighting alongside the Jem'Hadar. Their members even stepped away from the Empire to do so, seeking glory alongside the Jem'Hadar, but ultimately seem to have been accepted back into the Empire by the 32nd century. Lurathok was a descendant of this house. House D'Chok was a 23rd century great house and featured in Strange New Worlds, although it predates this. D'Chok himself was a reasonable man who met with Spock in an ambassadorial role to broker a deal over dilithium mining, despite there being an attempt to destabilise and ignite another Klingon Federation war. Captain Garkog was also of this house, suggesting they operated in nearby sectors of space. House Dagor was a house that held the honour of making the deepest strike into Federation territory during the First Klingon Federation War, hitting Starbase 1 on the fringes of the Solar System. Its chief rival was House Kozak, later renamed House Grilka, and rose to power by allying with House Kor. The blood feud with Kozak would continue for many generations and led to their dishonouring. However, they were able to retain their position and earn their way back into the graces of the Council through combat in the Dominion War. House Doras is one of the oldest continuous great houses of the Empire and one of the most involved in the story of Star Trek. For generations, they conducted themselves with honour until things turned in the 24th century. Well, except for that one Duras, who was a bit of a dick. But it was Gerard who conspired with the Romulan Star Empire to allow the attack of Khitomer, thinking to eliminate House Moh, his rival. The Romulans instead killed most of the colony, 4,000 Klingons, and the act was buried by his house after it came to light in 2366 to avoid civil war. A year later, however, Worf, son of Moh, slew Duras, son of Gerard, for the murder of his mate Kylar. Toral, son of Duras, was then to lead the house under Lursa and Bertor, who challenged the Empire for leadership. This did ignite a civil war, which ended in the disgrace of House Duras, the sparing of Toral's life, and the vendetta of the Duras sisters, who would go on to fell the Enterprise D before meeting their own death in combat. House Gannick was a 24th century house invested in ship construction. Over the years, their influence waned until the later century, and it looks like they may have lost their position. House Girja was an ancient house that harkened back to the times of the Klingon sarcophagus ship. They had great spiritual reverence and adherence to traditions many had moved beyond, eventually falling out of favour with the High Council and losing that position. Considered almost common folk, nearly stripped of their nobility, T'Kuvma rebranded the house under his name and attempted to unify the Klingons into war against the Federation by providing a common threat. As part of this, his sister, Ja'ula, married into the House Molkai, and his vision ultimately came true, though his house would not survive to see the emergence of the Klingon Defence Force, perishing in 2256. House Gorm was a noble house that seemed to have a reputation for telling tall tales, but was otherwise respected. House Gowron, however, is another major player, though most of that is down to one man. Gowron was not a member of the High Council, but his outspoken criticism of House Duras earned him much support, and ultimately he rose to chancellorship. This elevated his house to great status, but after his disgrace in the Dominion War, his house fell with him, being completely dissolved. House Gorv was a dwindling house by the 24th century. House Graf has holdings that date back to Kalis' time, known as Koff's Cliff. They were allies with House Palkar. House Grilka was formerly House Kozak and briefly the House of Quark. It was discovered that Kozak had fallen into debt, but their rivals, House Dagor, had been manipulating their finances to keep them in the red behind the scenes. This was solved by Quark, who had inadvertently slain Kozak, and Quark handed the house over to Grilka. The house fought honourably during the Dominion War, though took some heavy losses to both ships and finances. House Hergas profiteered from the loss of House Moch by purchasing their former lands. House Hergoch was a house that rose to power in the mid-23rd century and was still a high house by the mid-24th. House Jorn was going to be allied with House Varnak, but that fell apart. House Kanra lies in the ancestry of the Klingon Daha Master Corps, and dates back to the founding of the Empire as one of the first houses. Many in its lineage became afflicted with the augmentations created by House Antak for several generations. House Camriel was one of the houses that battled the Romulans alongside the Enterprise C over Narendra III. House Kazag was a 23rd century house. Kagor came after and had beef with House Duras. House Kompek rose to power in the early 24th century and was the namesake of the longest-serving Klingon Chancellor to date. Despite being allied to House Moch, he buried the dealings of House Duras, forsaking his friend's honour. However, his house seems to have outlasted him, though he had no direct heirs. House Konja was impersonated by Miles O'Brien and had battled the Gorn in generations past. They were known for raising war beasts and even fighting them personally to train them. House Kor has undergone several name changes with time. Formerly House Morek and House Njoj, Kor is one of the most influential outside of the Empire, and therefore within. They were descendants from the Imperial family, and had even had members become Chancellor, such as Morek. They too were afflicted with the augment virus, and many in their ranks were changed. So the name Morek was used to remind the other houses that this house was the closest thing the Klingons had to royalty. The ambitious Kol usurped T'Kuvma and attempted to grab many others under his banner during the Klingon Federation War, but overreached and was slain. His descendants, however, continued to hold much sway in the Empire, with another Kor, son of Rhinar, proving to be a master tactician and general. He battled both the Federation and Romulans at times, and the house's reputation suffered under Gowron's era before Kor finally perished in combat in 2375, restoring Gowron's opinion of it. House Korath was a potential great house from an alternate 25th century. They may still be around. House Krag is from the same era as House Dukhatas, the 31st century onwards, and were traditional hunter warriors, with Jaden from this house breaking the tradition. House K'tal was seen as an impartial house of great honour, who placed the good of the Empire over the gains of any particular house, even the Chancellor. Because of this, he was often sought to attribute or guide many decisions from several notable chancellors in his time. Mark was potentially a made-up house, or a minor one at least, maybe great, who knows. Moving on. House Kular was an ally of Gowron's and enemy of House Duras. House Lor was a staunch ally of House Moch and raised Worf's brother Kern. House Mang seems to be the house that assumed the position that House Moch once occupied until it was dishonoured. House McCock might not be well known, but it was the house to which Chancellor Gorkon and his daughter Azetba belonged. They both held the position of Chancellor for a time and, as such, amassed the house much influence, both being proponents of the Federation Klingon Peace Treaty. From one house of Chancellors to another, House Martok was not a great house, though a respected and rather large one nonetheless. Several members, including Martok, were low-born with little claim to grand lineages, but earned much honour in their duties and action. So the house was already earning respect and influence at a rapid pace by the Dominion War, and when Martok became Chancellor, his house briefly became the most influential, even adopting the surviving sons of House Moch into their retinue. The House of Mer was destroyed by the Dominion, and the House of Moch was an illustrious one that could also trace its lineages to the first noble families of the Empire. They sided with House Kor during the Klingon Federation War, though they denounced the use of terror raids from the other houses and found little glory in attacking civilian targets. Their house, although full of respected warriors, cast a wide net of professions, with one of the most recognisable being Worf, the litigator who defended Kirk and McCoy at their trial in 2293. He is the ancestor of Mo and his son, Worf of TNG fame. Thanks to the long-standing rivalry with House Duras, House Mo was considered heavily reduced before being falsely incriminated in 2366 and its Great House status removed. It was subsequently restored by Gowron a year later, but the house came to an end by 2373, with it being disgraced a second time by opposing Gowron. Its lands, finances and holdings were given to other houses. Surviving members, therefore, were either of no house or found their way into a new one, like House Martok. In hindsight, the house is considered honourable once again, but too little too late. House Mokai is a big player that has always lurked in the shadows of the Empire. Traditionally responsible for many stealth and spy operations, House Mokai supported House T'Kuvma during the Federation Klingon War and opposed the usurping of its vision by House Kor. Several times in its history, the house has been thought to have been wiped out, only to reveal surviving bloodlines and reassert itself at a later date. Interestingly enough, this is the house that Janeway was programmed to believe she was a part of in the Hirogen-programmed holodeck hunts. House Mong was another secretive house. House Mortran supported working with the Federation post-Dominion War. Morak was yet another of this era. House Napos was the smallest great house. House Norgra was an ally of House Moch and took in several members after it fell, some unknowingly, like Kern, son of Mo and Worf's brother. House Palkar is a house that has placed service to the Empire above all, with it maintaining a constant presence in the Klingon Defense Force or military since the era of Emperor Sompeg, who appears to have been alive, well, now-ish, the 21st century in Star Trek canon. House Targesh holds many fleet bases away from Kronos, and is therefore an important asset in any naval campaign. House Raoul was present in the Federation Klingon War, but when it was over in 2257, the house was shunned in the face of its general's conduct. A chance for redemption was denied the house when the heir failed to eliminate the dishonoured general and his killer, Dr. Mbenga. House Torg took in the remnants of the disgraced House Duras, but also stooped to working alongside Romulan agents to gain leverage in the Higher Council. They eventually marked House Martok as their key rivals, which may have had something to do with Martok taking in the survivors of House Mol. Looks like ancestral grudges transcend houses too. And finally, House Vrag, which was exiled by Gowron in 2372. So, as you can see, there are many of the great houses that each have their own rivalries, alliances and grudges. Deep-seated issues of honour, betrayal and simply falling in and out of favour with the current Chancellor have painted a roiling sea of families and bloodlines. No sooner does one wave rise than it falls or is consumed by another. We see a smattering of this in the shows, through the antics of House Martok, Gowron, Moch and Duras. And for all its faults, the Klingon War, as depicted in Discovery, at least continued this trend of feudalism and infighting present in the Empire. Being the Chancellor half the time is going to simply be attempting to corral these members into a joint operation, as each has a say in the direction of the Empire. This video is long enough without breaking down the greater view of Klingon politics, so for now I'll leave the summarisation of the Great Houses here. There are many other smaller houses that may or may not be considered one of the greats, so if a name you are familiar with is not here, that may be why. Although I do want to draw special note to the houses of Koloth and Kang, as these two are prominent and respected Daha Masters of the Klingon Empire, but I could not find for sure if their houses were considered one of the great ones on the Council, or if they were just merely very well respected. I mean, they even earned their place in the Eternal Hall of Heroes on Kronos. The same can be said for Kruj and Chang. Thanks for watching, I've been Rick, and until the next one, Kupla.